experience, so it became more of a personal responsibility that their students would graduate.
Within St. Kate's, it was very similar to the U of M, but not as many resources. They are a smaller institution, they are privatized, so their funding comes from different places. And I wasn't actually able to take with me any of the information because they only made enough copies for the students who needed to have it at orientation, just because budgeting was different there. They don't make, giant packets that they can hand out to whoever. But they do have different orientations. They are trying to do that customization that we've been talking about throughout this presentation. They had a different orientation program for transfer students. They have a different one for ESL. They have a different one for first year, and then they have one for grad students. So they're trying. There's definitely room for improvement still, but they are definitely moving in that direction. And then lastly, and sadly, the least amount of information came from Fond du Lac. Unfortunately, their budget does not allow for hardly anything. Since they are a tribal institution, they have just about zero funding for anything because it's all pretty much donation-based, some federal grants and whatnot. But they have a welcome week. They do their best. I talked to the Dean of Student Services, and this falls under that. There's no office for orientation. There's no office for Welcome Week. There's not an office for much besides the Dean of Student Services, so that was who I had to talk to. But they do try. So I guess within this, just wrapping it up, bringing this back to closure.
And just real quick, I wanted to point out too, on the job titles, we did show an example of just different job titles. So if you are interested in looking at a position in this field, think outside of the box. It's not always just going to be a Google search on first year experience coordinator or new student orientation. So it will behoove you to do a little more research into the different structures of the institutions and then how student orientation fits into those.
Yep. And just wrapping it up, we want to continue to place in your mind the idea that we need to move forward and try and become more inclusive and more accommodating in the area of orientation. So if we have any time for questions, beautiful. Questions? No questions.
What is at the tribal college, what does the week of welcome look like? Because I know I see that the quote says, this is also about keeping tribal traditions alive.
Yeah, it was really interesting, just from a personal standpoint, to interview him as well. But the Welcome Week is very similar to what you would assume it would be. It's here's a tour of the college, and here's how to register for classes, and here's the office for financial aid. Very generic, just like trying to walk students through the basic programs and things that are offered at the institution. But within the tribal portion of that, their community does offer a lot of really cool kind of extracurricular options for the community to come into the school as well. Like there's a moccasin making workshop that students run and stuff like that. So that's where the tribal aspect came in. Yeah.
Did they talk about the planning process actually, or when they had to start implementing okay, we need to have orientation done by a finalized plan by this date when it officially happens. So a time span.
Yeah. Well, this is definitely a cyclical type of job, and they did kind of say sometimes it can get a little repetitive, and so you're always just maybe each year trying to think of new ways that you can make it a little more innovative. But she didn't. I didn't get specific dates, but certainly the biggest time of year is going to be getting through the summer, especially if they have a summer long program which helps students that maybe are a little bit underserved and that need the extra boost to transition into college. So that'd be more time, but definitely in August, and that's their big hoo-ha, and then things will slow down. So it all really depends on what the school's kind of vision is for the orientation program. But right now, she said that they kind of have it on autopilot almost now because it follows the same.
Kara at St. Kate's said that they literally start planning the next orientation after the first one's done. So, yeah.
This is one of my favorite areas, and so from my experience at UMD, they had also advisement and registration house through their office. Did you notice that happening a lot at the institutions that you interviewed at?
Definitely within in the tribal college, just about anything student affairs is housed under the Dean of Student Services. And within St. Kate's as well, I talked to the head, Deb Reiner, you probably know her, the head of student services and like the activities center as well. So it was all pretty much housed under the same area. Yeah.
And you're saying with advisement?
Yeah.
Yeah, so at the National American University, that it fell under advisement. So those were the people that were directing it. And then at U of M, there's definitely a lot. I mean, they have to really coordinate well with a lot of other departments to bring them in because they want them to be represented at those orientations.
Did any of the programs you talked to talk about how close they work with families and if their offices are combined with like a family program type of situation?
The only one that mentioned it is U of M. The other one didn't because they work with generally older students, so it's not necessarily an area that they felt there was a need for. But U of M does do, they have their own orientation for families as well.
I didn't get into it too much with Keith at the Tribal Community College, but they do a lot of family involvement just at the institution itself because a lot of it is like generations of families have come through that same institution.
Kelly?
Oh, yeah, sure. Did they talk a lot about their orientation and their selection process, like how they choose student leaders?
I didn't get into that very much.
No.
St. Kate's mentioned a little bit. They do have one undergraduate position, which I thought was super cool, that they allow basically a graduate level position to like kind of, I don't know, I'm stumbling over my words, but basically the student plans out orientation with the very close supervision of the staff in the department, and it is a paid position, so they do have an undergrad who